Have you ever stopped and thought about gender roles in toys? How certain brands or toy lines would market differently to boys or girls? And the toy aisle was engineered to attract either one or the other. The girl aisle is bright pink, it had baby dolls, Barbie, cooking sets, and the boy aisle is made up mostly of action, sports, cars, or war. So basically, girls are nurturing and boys are violent. And toy companies were pretty pointed in who they were marketing to, but every now and then, if a toy line was so successful, they would market it towards the other gender. So on this episode, we're going to talk about toy lines that were made for girls, but then later for boys, and toy lines that were made for boys, and then later for girls. Welcome back, guys, and this episode is a topic that I'm extremely interested in because I think I have experience with it. I grew up in a multi-family home, and me and my brother lived on the top floor. We had all our action figures and things like that, but on the downstairs apartment, my two girl cousins lived, so we were always familiar with the toys that they were getting for Christmas or birthdays or gifts, and there was always some toys that I wish that I could have. And they were later made for boys. So I thought, why don't we go through some of those famous toy lines that were once marketed to either boys or girls, and then go down the list. And we can't start off this list without mentioning probably the first instance of gender swapping toy lines, and of course that is Barbie and G.I. Joe. Barbie was released in 1959 by Mattel, and prior to that, really the only girl choices for toys were baby dolls that they can kind of take care of, and this is really the first time we're seeing this wide-scale fashion doll. You can put different outfits on it, different accessories, but there was really a hole in the boys market, and Hasbro came out with G.I. Joe. So in 1964, that kicked off the whole G.I. Joe craze, and it was kind of in the same vein where you can get your Joe, you can put different outfits on it, but this time it came with weapons, it came with different military gear, and it had to be different. You couldn't just put a Ken doll in a box and call it a doll. You had to call it something different that would be more attractive to boys, which was the term action figures. But it was also the first time that we got a figure like this. It was highly posable, there was lots of play value, so at the very top of the list, we got to talk about the most obvious, and that's G.I. Joe and Barbie. And probably the second most famous for gender swapping toy lines has to go to Masters of the Universe and She-Ra, Princess of Power. Masters of the Universe has been going strong by Mattel since 1982, and She-Ra was kind of their way of boosting ratings for the show and also opening up the toy line to girls. Now, I don't think She-Ra was ever as successful as the original Masters of the Universe toy line. However, I think modern day collectors want as much or as many characters as they can possibly get from both franchises. And while I don't collect Masters of the Universe, one of the coolest things to see is when people have their Castle Grayskull, their Snake Mountain, and their Eternia displayed. I'd really love to see a re-release of the Crystal Palace to kind of add that last final playset to their collection, because I think just seeing it all together, not many kids or boys probably had the Crystal Palace back in the day. I think modern day collectors would probably want that in their collection. And next we're going to talk about the Trolls line with various other Trolls that were made in action figure form. Now, the original Troll dolls date all the way back to the 50s. They were pretty popular throughout the 60s and 70s, but did have a resurgence in the 90s. And these Luck Trolls or Lucky Trolls, they had neon hair, they had gems on their bellies, but were really kind of targeted towards the girl market. We had them in our house as different holiday decorations. We had Halloween versions, we had Christmas versions, Valentine's Day ones, but it wasn't until certain action figure lines came out where there was Trolls for boys. Troll Warriors were released in 1992 by Applause, and these were characters that I would say closely resembled actual Scandinavian trolls, but again, they had armor, they had weapons, they had different colors, they looked a little more menacing, and I think that was kind of the first toy line to kick it off. And then my favorite troll toy line was, of course, Battle Trolls by Hasbro. These were released from 1992 to 1993, and these things were awesome. They kind of had that gross out look to them. Some of them had scars or warts or boils, but really they kind of covered all the different things that boys loved. Action, adventure, sci-fi, horror. There was ninjas. It was just super cool toy line. They weren't really posable, but there was some of these neon colors in their weapons and their hair. So just a really fun one. And then the last of the troll lines dedicated for boys were stone protectors. We had all these, and I did have a special place in my heart for them. They were produced by Ace Toys, who I mentioned them before in a previous episode. They're the ones that created BC Bikers, but they kind of kept the original troll face and the gem concept, only the gem was in their chest, and when you wound their arm up, they actually did spark. So they were really fun, super 90s, but I always did love the Stone Protectors. So probably Battle Trolls and Stone Protectors were my favorite, more so than Troll Warriors, but it all started with those trolls. Next we have Sky Dancers and Dragonflies by Galoob. And Sky Dancers were released in 1994. I remember these because my cousins definitely had them, and they were these pastel colored fairies that were on handles. Some of the handles were like a magic wand or a pony or a unicorn, and you would rip the cord and then the figurines would fly up into the air and glide down. They were super cool, however, they were the cause of many injuries for kids. I think there was over 100 injuries reported, and tens of thousands of these toys were recalled. Which is funny because in 1996, Galoob did make a version for boys called Dragonflies. Now these were more muscular versions, they had armor, they had weapons, and instead of having a handle that was a magic wand or a pony, it would be something like a dragon. And they still had the same cool action feature. Not sure if they recalled these, but they were still pretty fun, and nothing was more satisfying than ripping on that cord and watching your toy fly into the air and glide down. Now this one's kind of odd because I don't know if most people correlate them, but I'll put the Easy Bake Oven and Creepy Crawlers as the next gender swap toys. The original Easy Bake Oven was released by Kenner back in 1963, and throughout the years different companies have taken it on and they've kept producing new versions of this time and time again. But the boys version of this was Creepy Crawlers, and I guess marketing to boys, it was just make it gross, use bugs, make it stink, and you know, they got me because I love the Creepy Crawlers machine. I thought it was super cool, although I did burn my hand a few times and I do remember smelling those chemicals quite fondly. But just because I was a boy didn't mean I didn't want to eat cupcakes. I definitely didn't want to eat bugs. But other edible machines did come out for the boy market. Most notably was the Dr. Dreadful Food Lab, which now boys can actually mix up ingredients and eat the items. Of course, it was something with that gross out theme like brains or guts, but it was still pretty fun and in the same vein. And I didn't know, but still making gross out food items, Hasbro did release an item in competition with an Easy Bake Oven in 2002 called the Queasy Bake Oven. So I guess boys continuously want to eat gross stuff. Next we have Power Wheels, and I don't think these were ever inherently girls or boys, but probably boys were the target audience at first for these until there was a Barbie vehicle release, the Barbie Corvette in 1989. I remember we had the tri-wheel bikes. They were really cool, but I did know that we had some girl cousins that had the Corvette. And either way, I didn't care what color it was. I just wanted to get in one of those things and drive it. So it was always super fun. I don't think it mattered who you are. But nowadays, they make all sorts of cool vehicles for boys and girls. They make Escalades. Barbie has continued to make different versions of Power Wheels. Other than the Corvette, they've made a Jeep Wrangler. They've made the camper. So just a fun toy, doesn't have to be for one gender or the other. And in 1992, Home Alone 2 was released, and who remembers Kevin McAllister going throughout the whole movie with his Talkboy? Now, while the Talkboy wasn't released in time for the film, it was released in 1993 in line with the release of the video cassette tape sales. And this was produced by Tiger. I don't know if you remember those handheld video games, they kind of sucked, but they were also making some pretty cool electronic toys. And Talkboy was just super fun. You can almost emulate what you saw in the movie, not quite. The creators of Talkboy thought because the word boy was in the product, they were cutting their sales in half. So in 1995, they released a version for girls called Talkgirl. It was pretty much the same product, it was just metallic pink, and it did almost the same exact thing. So another cool version of a toy that was gender swapped, and not sure how popular it was with the girls. I do remember the Talkboy pen, and I'm sure that was every teacher's nightmare. And last on this list goes to Polly Pocket and Mighty Max. Polly Pocket was produced by Bluebird Toys in 1989, and they featured scenes of mostly everyday household stuff. So you would be inside Polly Pocket's home, you would be inside a pet store, and the actual shell of the playset was in a pastel color. Usually it was like a seashell or it looked like a makeup compact. So not really for the boy market, but it wasn't until 1993 when Mighty Max came out that opened up a whole new world for boys. Mighty Max produced playsets called Doom Zones, and these things were so cool, mostly horror based, but a little sci-fi as well. And they produced so many different playsets, and I still have most of my original ones. My favorite was the Dragon one. These were an opening, I think, for many other action figure lines to start producing miniature playsets. So I love that Polly Pocket inspired Mighty Max, because then Mighty Max inspired a whole bunch of other miniature playsets that came out after. So what other toy lines were made for girls and later for boys, or the other way around? Let me know down in the comments if I forgot any. And until the next episode, we'll catch you next time.